Hello, guys, and welcome to my week 2 thoughts and reactions to each NFL game. Some of these I obviously didn't catch like the whole game type of thing, but I think I got the general gist of like most of these games, down with what I did see. So without further ado, we're gonna go in order. Starting off with Thursday night's game, obviously my Packers, looked very, very good. They were pressuring Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels was not able to really get away that much or rush for very much. They never got the run game going. And, 17 yards apiece for Daniels, Eckler, and Krosky Merritt. Eckler, I'm sorry about his injury, condolences to him. This running back room now has Krosky Merritt as kind of their sole, you know, primary back, and you wonder if they're going to try and bring someone in or what they're going to do here. But looking at Washington, they clearly wanted to pass a lot, and to me, I just, I'm not so sure with it. My Packers were obviously ahead early, 14-3, but it wasn't until, really, the fourth quarter where they pulled far enough ahead to be like, oh, this is a victory. 14-3 for a while, and then, 17-3, a 2-possession game, with a guy like Jaden Daniels, whom I like, but did kind of envision the Washington Commanders having a tougher year because they're so pass oriented. We didn't know how the run game was going to look. And, they kept Eckler and brought in Krosky Merritt from the draft, but they moved on from Brian Robinson and they brought in a bunch of O-linemen. And obviously, they don't feel crazy confident in those O-linemen to be able to, create adequate, blocking schemes and paths for the running back. Hence why they didn't run it that much, type of thing. And it's not like they were down so much they couldn't have ran it, type of thing, with how much time was left. My Packers, the one qualm I have is, well, Jordan Love has been doing very good on like intermediate passes and being able to gun it in there, and the wide receivers have been getting open and, creating yards after the catch, most notably Tucker Kraft. The deep ball is still kind of not there. And don't get me wrong, Jordan Love has, he's had some deep balls this season. Obviously, they're not all duds, but you look at this game, would have been blown open a lot more if a couple of passes had been accurate to Matthew Golden. And, Matthew Golden, I feel like, has had his opportunities kind of squandered through just inconsistencies in the deep passing game type of thing. Regardless of how much better the passing game looks without the drops from last year and Jordan Love being fully healthy. I don't think I need to speak on the defense of the Packers. I think Edgerrin Cooper continues to ball out. It's very, very good. And then Gary with a sack, Carl Brooks half, Parsons with a half sack. And even Baron Sorrell, I was kind of excited when he came in, number 99, obviously later in the game, and you can't call it garbage time. I guess you could, but he looked very quick off the line. Honestly, I thought I was watching like a dude that's like Micah, is my comparison. Very quick off the line, very strong. And we'll continue to see if they use him more and more because he was suffering an injury, and that's why he didn't play week 1. But other than that, I think that this Washington defense did play pretty tough. They weren't giving up like runs that were very, very long type of thing. And it's like a 10-yard long rush for Josh Jacobs, who obviously is still the bell cow. And then they're using other guys in jet sweep scenarios, which is fun to see because Savion Williams and Matthew Golden are obviously quick. But, thinking about this, I think that, the run defense has definitely improved on Washington, which was kind of their Achilles heel last year. And they obviously got burned, 3 times from the Eagles, and that sort of thing in the run game. But that's my analysis of this game. So if it took a little bit longer, obviously with this being a marquee game, I was kind of like, and obviously watching the whole thing, I wanted to give my perception of it. Moving on to Rams, Tennessee. The Rams, they obviously got behind early. Tennessee was ahead. The Rams got ahead, but then you see here before half, Tennessee was able to pull ahead. But then you see the Rams defense respond and only give up 2 field goals in the second half, which is winning football to me. There was a good amount of running, that I could tell from the Rams. I think that Stafford is, really, really settling in. The interception, I've said it, this Tennessee Titans defense is a win now defense with a lot of crafty veterans and savvy players, on their defense, that has gotten interceptions in consecutive weeks. First against Bo Nix and now against Matthew Stafford. Moving on, Devontae Adams did really, really good this game. Obviously lined up against L'Jarius Sneed, obviously got targeted a lot, but was able to make it count when it mattered. This is kind of the thing that I envisioned, is that Stafford and Devontae will have a similar connection, much like Rodgers and Devontae did, at his time in Green Bay, because he's still a very effective route runner and very, very good. But things kind of fell apart to me with the Titans. The fumble, obviously not good, type of thing. But the Rams, they played, really good second half football, which is how you win games. And how I expect a veteran team like them to perform. Bengals, Jacksonville Jaguars. I was thoroughly surprised, I guess, with Trevor Lawrence's performance. 2 picks against a defense that many consider to not be very good, and you're only sacked, once. I'm sorry, but it's just not a good thing. Burrow going out, really sad for him. Just a player that it's like last year put up such lightning numbers, and obviously now we're going to kind of go without a second season of Burrow, essentially, since he obviously had the ACL tear the one season, and it sucks because he's gonna be out for like 3 months, so he could come back in like December or January, like late December or early January type of thing, but Jake Browning looked good. This is a guy that I think he obviously threw 3 picks, which is not very good type of thing, but he made the throws when they counted, I guess. Maybe this is the reason why there's rumors swirling about the Bengals looking for a QB to bring in. My instant thought is that they bring in Kirk Cousins, who's obviously on Atlanta. But the thing about that is they would need to do some sort of restructure of the contract, because there's no way that the Bengals are paying Kirk Cousins. They might have to give up a high pick for him, but if they really, really want to be contenders this year, or Zach Taylor's worried about his job, or, the GM type of thing, like, who knows what they'll do, to be honest with you. But, a good win for the Bengals, who really needed it, because, now it's going to be tough. In a tough division, a tough conference, and they have Jake Browning as of right now. But kudos to them. And Jacksonville, I'm sorry, but I'm really sick of seeing the collapses from you, and being unable to close out games, essentially. Ravens, Browns, this game kind of looked close, but then it ended up not being close type of thing, and Baltimore scored a bunch of points. Interesting enough, Dylan Gabriel got plugged in, type of thing for 3 passes, interesting. But, you look at this Browns team and they're still clearly led by their defense type of thing, where it's like, it wasn't easy for the Ravens, having a good amount of TFLs and sacks, on Josh Lamar Jackson. Goodness. And it's like the run game, not very good. But then again, Cleveland, crazy good defense, obviously, still. Roquan having a game, very, impressed by him. Nate Wiggins getting a pick in his, first one, I think, in, year 2. Very solid win by Baltimore. I expect nothing less. Bills, Jets. This kind of showed to me the lackluster play of the Jets. They pull Justin Fields, type of thing. Even Josh Allen came out and Trubisky threw, a long pass type of thing. But, James Cook looking very good. And the Jets, for whatever reason, looked like the Jets of last year, where it's like James Cook, that long run that he was able to make, that I was like, he should have been tackled a few yards, from the line or something like that. And they just gave up this fat run type of thing. But otherwise, the receiving core looking good, getting good distribution out of, these, Josh Allen. But, a sound win, and kind of one that we all probably expected, Patriots, Dolphins. Patriots look pretty good. Started off the game rather hot, but then lulled around and let the Dolphins kind of stay around type of thing. But then closed the game off strong and played very, very tough. I'm definitely kind of, very proud of them. Tua looked way better this game up against a defense that is, pretty good, obviously. But overall, just a good win for the Patriots, their first of the year, obviously, and, close behind, obviously, the Bills. Moving on to 49ers Saints. Mac Jones looked pretty damn good for a guy who's, many now consider, a career backup, type of thing. And it kind of, to me, shows that the scheme and that sort of thing, you got a guy like McCaffrey and you got a team like this with a scheme like this, that it can, Shanahan can make it work with just about any QB, regardless of talent and that sort of thing. And this is very, very good. 26-39, they had him throw a lot. Didn't run it a ton, which is kind of crazy to me. You'd think they'd take some pressure off of Mac Jones. But even Spencer Rattler playing well this game, really developing and that sort of thing. With 3 TDs. Just overall, his team couldn't really score more, I guess, and the San Fran, they just need a better way to distribute the ball around, I think, and get more guys involved in the run game to take, a little bit of pressure off of Spencer Rattler, even though he played pretty well against a pretty good defense. Props to the Niners for sneaking an away game win. Moving on to Cowboys-Giants, obviously a lot of fireworks this game. I thought it was kind of fitting that Russell Wilson, you could say that, he was back, this and this and that, but it's like the Cowboys were blowing coverages on Malik Nabers. Malik Nabers, who arguably looks like the best wide receiver from the draft last year at this point, in this point in time, in my opinion. You could argue Brian Thomas, but Malik Nabers just getting out balling and catching footballs and that sort of thing. But then, of course, Russell Wilson essentially throwing the game away to the Cowboys, in overtime, when it's like, you just can't do anything. If a guy's not wide open, apparently, or they didn't have some blown over the top coverage, type of thing. But in all honesty, I don't think New York should have been in this game. I think the Cowboys, for whatever reason, just, I don't know. They had a very, very off day on defense. They play the Eagles tough, but not the Giants. Make it make sense, people. But, impressive win by the Cowboys. Their kicker is obviously clutch as can be. Nothing else to say. Dak Prescott played pretty well, but it does worry me when he has to throw it 52 times. I think they should run the ball a little bit more. But I guess in a shootout like this, maybe I'm wrong, type of thing. But, impressive win by the Cowboys, but boy, would have been sad if they lost. Or would it? Moving on to Lions-Bears. The Bears, I think this tells more about the Bears than the Lions. The Bears have had late game just nonsense, essentially, in their defense, and to give up 2 touchdowns a quarter, besides the third quarter where one of them, turns into a field goal, essentially, and that sort of thing. This is absolutely asinine. They've got to do something on this defense, to stop limiting these plays. And this was a defense that was very, very good and didn't really have that much, turnover. If anything, they should have gotten better. From the draft picks, from the guys they brought in, they were pretty bad against the run. But it's like I guess the crazy thing is it's not like the Lions ran for a crazy amount of yards, type of thing with their 2 workhorse backs, and then they had some other things going on here. Obviously 177 total, but this is a team that could easily eclipse 200 or more on the ground, with their two backs, in my opinion. And obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown, they could not be covered. It was ridiculous, like really, really bad, type of thing. And I'm just leaning on the side that, even though they brought in the Saints, Dennis Allen from the Saints, who had ran a good defense for years, it's almost like it's been found out, or these players don't know how to execute the scheme. I'm leaning more towards the players not being able to execute the scheme, because this is pathetic. You give up what should have been a surefire win a week ago against McCarthy, who looked even worse this week, and did not look good this week. So it's like I'm more leaning towards the Bears just being really bad, and that's not just me being a hater because I'm a Packers fan. They just look terrible. And the Lions, it was easy pickings, and you can't tell me they just changed a couple things and they're the same old offense. Like, if you saw what I was seeing, the Bears just weren't covering anything, type of thing. Moving on to Seahawks Steelers. My one key point about this game is that the Seahawks were outplaying the Steelers, but they were not putting points up on the board, type of thing. 7 points in the first half is kind of asinine to me. Yeah, they got really good pressure on Rodgers in the second half, and they ultimately weren't doing as much. I think it's, a testament to what, how porous their run game is, and that they really got to do something to fix this. Because Rodgers isn't as mobile as he used to be, and he can't carry you in every single week with no protection. And then I think about that special teams where that Steelers player touches the ball, and I'm assuming thinks it's going to go out the back of the end zone, but doesn't do anything to go grab it or check on it, and he gives up a free touchdown, because otherwise this game then looks like a very close game. But that one blunder, that guy might not even be on kickoff return anymore. Type of thing. But kudos to Seattle for not, messing this one up like they did last week against the Niners, and, for keeping themselves at 500 through 2 weeks. And the Steelers, it's just kind of unfortunate and unlucky, in my opinion. I think he did a lot of good this game, and Aaron kind of showed he can still kind of sling it. But, one of the picks was obviously, he's just forcing it down the field because the game is over, type of thing. But Seattle, very, very good game. Very, very good game. And, they need to keep on playing like this and keep on utilizing, Sam Darnold, the way that he had success somewhat in Minnesota with like the play action and that sort of thing. But moving on, we have Colts Broncos. Obviously, this game, all I'm going to say is the Indianapolis Colts seemingly have a pretty good offense, and Daniel Jones is doing a good job with it. Obviously, they also have a run game. This is kind of insane. You'd think the Broncos would have a better run defense, if I'm being honest with you. Obviously, a lot of these yards, you would have had 24 carries for like 100 yards if you hadn't had this 68-yarder type of thing, or, just shy. So it's like you would have had a 4-yard average, essentially, which is good still, but obviously this, this lawn inflates his average on Jonathan Taylor. But it's like, if he's chipping at you all game and nullifying that good pass rush you have on Denver, then that is a problem. You need to be able to stop the run if you're Denver. Looking at Bo Nix, very, very complete game. Obviously, they didn't have, as crazy of a rushing attack type of thing, but he did everything you could do to kind of win this game. And then that penalty, obviously, on the kickoff, there is no excuse for that. I think it's like 1.7% of kickoffs since that rule was instituted have resulted in that penalty. Like, that is abysmally low. But kudos to the Colts for having a very efficient offense and always putting points on their board. Their punter, you guys, hasn't punted in the first 2 weeks. Cardinals Panthers. The Cardinals, very, very good. Kyler Murray not needing to do anything like crazy special type of thing. They didn't have a crazy run game, but the defense of the Cardinals did very, very good, in my opinion. And looking at this team, I think they just need to feed Marvin Harrison more. He's not getting enough targets, and they need to make him a focal point type of thing. And it's like the Panthers, Bryce Young, it just looked rough. You know, they made him throw way too damn much, in my opinion. And I get it that your run game wasn't crazy effective, but I've seen worse. And it's like making him throw 55 times. I mean, I guess you are down a lot early, but, you know, it was a lot of pressure. And, you know, perhaps with, you know, without, you know, all these throws and him throwing one pick because of it, and getting sacked 3 times, you maybe would have had a little bit easier of a time beating the Cardinals. But the Cardinals, very sound defense and, you know, good passing defense, which I think the Cardinals have a good pass D, if I'm being honest with you. Moving on to Eagles Chiefs. This obviously was a freaking low yardage kind of game. And it was just ridiculous to me how much Mahomes still has to run type of thing because they can't get anything going otherwise in a regular run scheme. You know, Kelsey and that pick that Mahomes got targeted with, it's insane. Tyquan Thorne, I think they really need to try and make this guy the focal point. He is an explosive play waiting to happen. Tall, fast, gives you something all these other wide receivers do not give you. Type of thing. They need to figure out something or try to get creative with this young man, you know. And then you have Kelsey to fall back on until Rashee Rice is back, because they're still 4 games away from him being back. But you know, credit to Philadelphia, they really got after Mahomes and pressured him and forced him to run and not let them capitalize on a lot of drives. You know, kudos to them that their defense can win them games, obviously, with Jalen Carter playing this game. Falcons, Vikings. All I can say is field goal galore in this game. Insane, dude. McCarthy looked like a rookie with rough patches. The interceptions, Michael Penix didn't do a crazy amount, I think, this game. I think it was like Bijan Robinson, obviously, and Tyler Algier show, which, if you're Minnesota, that's concerning, considering you got the Lions and the Packers, who are top tier rushing attacks in your division, you know, type of thing. I think Kyle Pitts had some good catches type of thing, but overall there wasn't a lot. Drake London's fumble, credit to Eric Wilson, you know, on that type of thing. But overall, the Vikings, I think they played pretty good on defense, and the defense played well enough that if they had more, you know, or less time on the field, because the offense could actually score, this could have been a different game. But kudos to Atlanta. They went to a hostile environment, and they took the sound out of the crowd with their run game. Buccaneers, Texans. I did not think the Buccaneers were going to come and they were going to score here. Baker did look a lot better despite his completion percentage not being anything wild. And, you know, he was pressured quite a bit, but he made the clutch plays when they needed him to. You know, and I'm sure Buccaneers fans were sweating a little bit when he ran for a first on, what was it, 4th and 10 late in the game, leading to their win. But CJ Stroud just looked inaccurate. I like to think that, you know, his throw to Nico Collins was accurate, but it's like Nico Collins is gifted and he caught, like, you know, what most receivers would never be able to catch with his size and length type of thing. And it's a benefit to Stroud in that sense that he has Nico, because not everyone has a Nico Collins. And it's like Jaden Higgins finally got a catch. I think they need to get him more involved. If I'm being honest with you, I'm surprised he's not more involved, because it's like if you get Nico and you know, Jaden Higgins going both, and I mean, even Xavier Hutchinson didn't look terrible, didn't get targeted a whole lot. And Dalton Schultz, this is a very good weapon offense. You know, but the Buccaneers, I liked what they did. You know, overall, I think Mike Evans had enough of an impact, you know, up against, you know, Derek Stingley Jr., who's a baller. And kudos to the Buccaneers for going to Houston and being able to pull out a win, obviously, in a high suspense game. Chargers, Raiders. Why does it show no stats here? Okay, we're apparently not going to look at any stats for this game. From what I could gather, the Raiders really, really struggled. Geno Smith really, really struggled, you know, this game. He could not pass it downfield at all. The guy trying to keep him in the game the whole game was Ashton Genty. and he was, he was, I don't know the number of yards, obviously, yes, now because of this, but in any sense, Genty was pulling off moves. He was really, really hustling against this, ball hawking defense. And this defense, to me, is looking very, very good. The Khalil Mack injury, we'll see how much that affects them. I think he's obviously still a very gifted player and a very good leader for them. I think Bud Dupree can still be very, very good. And he's always been, kind of that silent guy that has had a successful career as, as a guy who was only the marquee, a starting edge rusher early in his career. But, he's still a force to be reckoned with and plays very well. I'm sure the Chargers are still going to have a very, very good defense without Khalil Mack. And I mean, obviously Khalil Mack left, somewhat early, and they did pretty well, without him, obviously. But, kudos to the Chargers. They really are the team to beat in this division, obviously, after this week, with their hot start and that sort of thing, and Herbert doing very well, and, the run game doing well on this team. So, kudos to the Chargers, and, props to them. With that being said, you guys, that's going to conclude this video of my week 2 reactions and thoughts to every game. If you like content like this, or you want to share your opinion, on any of the games, feel free to comment in the comment section below. But as always, go Pack Go.